on, beautiful? This is Mom and Jen. We're back with another baby blog this week. I got my wonderful partner with me, Keys, and we're about to get right into it because we got a lot to talk about. Say what's up, Keys.
What's up, everybody? Yeah, we're about to get into a dope topic, and we're gonna share our thoughts. And we're really gonna get into this topic, and for me, I think it's gonna be a little touchy as far as me, sharing my feelings. But I think I'm really about to do something with it. So I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, this week it is going to be something that isn't traditionally talked about when you talk about pregnancy and parenthood and the whole nine. This is not a traditional conversation. This is for those deep thinkers out there and those people that are, I would say, in the different way of thinking, not in the not in the mainstream way of thinking. If you like to think outside the box, or you like to think about I wouldn't say conspiracies, but along those lines. This podcast this week is definitely for you, especially if you're a mom to be, or parents to be, or you're just listening for the heck of it. I mean, welcome, all are welcome to this podcast. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, so for sure, I can definitely tell you, you know, everyone shares a journey, but it's how you share it with that person that you find. It's it's extraordinarily different, but at the same time, with that person, who knows? It leaves up a lot of questions in the air and a lot of different perspectives, coming together, and you get to really find yourself and find the things that you can share with each other, love to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's really speak your truth with one another and create truth. And I think that's like highly common, but it's just not mainstream, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now that we had that introduction out the way, we can get right into it. So, the way that I want to start this podcast off is I want to start you off with a definition, okay? So, the definition of a hospital is an institution providing medical and surgical treatment and nursing care for sick or injured people. If we go back to the Latin word, hospital comes from hospice or hospit, and that actually means guest house or house of guests. So we all know that in today's tradition, hospitals are used for helping people. You have your nurses, your doctors, your surgeons, all of the above, and um, typically they help you with whatever medical issue that you may be dealing with at the time. However, hospitals were not always as we know them today. And everybody has their different opinions when it comes to hospitals and hospice care. Um, but hospitals were not created for treatment. Hospitals were actually used for show. The very few hospitals that date back to about like 1600s were used for experimentation. Um, and in these experimentations, you can kind of look at it almost as one of the first circuses. It was used to broadcast certain experiments that would happen in these hospitals. Um, it was not used for healing, it was used for show. So that's something that I want to talk about today because we know that as you go through pregnancy with your partner, traditionally, with all the technology that we have, it's been made easy to be able to know the gender at 10 weeks. It's been easy to, go to checkups continuously. And you're advised to know what's going on with your pregnancy every second of every day. And that's the tradition when it comes to pregnancy. You take your prenatals, you have your prenatals that have certain vitamins in them that are good for the baby. And upon research, this is where the day and age of labor and birthing and the process um, comes from, really.
And I would like to think that with this process comes a lot of conditioning and just, huh, I would say conditioning and, just a taught way of what is only common
Mm-hmm.
to be common sense, even though it stems from, such a out of place way of putting it nowadays to speak. And not to say that it's not for the right reason. There are causes in which people need help, but it's also in the sense of what is the reason behind certain ways of going about helping someone,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. And with that comes layers on layers on layers of who knows whatever that is that they're following, because
Mm-hmm.
that don't even make no sense.
So I like what you said when you said conditioning, right? Can you go more in depth about that? Like, what do you mean by condition? Like, as a way of saying, like, we were conditioned, or we are conditioned in this day and age to go to hospitals for help, or to pediatricians for care, or to depend on modern day medicine. Like, can you go into depth when you mean condition?
Mm, well, think about it like this: they all follow the same system.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this system stem from, and why
Mm-hmm.
is there so many inconsistencies?
Right.
And it's not in just one area or one place. It's just happened to be so many, let's call them plot holes, let's say.
Okay. You saying like plot holes in the system, plot holes within the medical field itself, or just like throughout history, because none of us really know um how everything stemmed from. We just know really where we came from versus where we're at in history now. So would you say like that's the plot hole that you mean, like throughout history there's been like a lack of evidence, or
Hmm. I wouldn't say lack of evidence.
okay,
Definitely wouldn't say that.
okay,
I would just say it's like saying the seriousness of the practice itself.
okay,
To be able to be in a place like that,
okay,
you would really have to get somewhere.
yeah,
You're not just someone who just knows stuff.
okay.
You gotta really be in the field.
Well, okay. Do I got
But also, to be in the field doesn't mean that you know stuff either.
right? Do I got permission to speak my truth and nothing but the truth?
Sure.
Okay. When you go to get a medical when you go to get a medical degree, excuse me, you are going to be able to practice medicine. That's what a medical degree is. Practice. You are practicing medicine. So waivers that you sign at the doctor and waivers that you sign at the hospital is because you are giving them permission to use whatever is going on with you as practice to building further evidence upon medicine and the medical field and treatment. That's what a medical degree is. From personal experience, I've always found that to be true. I always felt like, yes, it's good to have a medical degree and to study, but I feel like you studying, yeah, it's the same thing as going to college for any um field. You're studying that field and the history built upon that field, but you're learning every day just as someone else. learning every day within that field. You know, there's not a base of this is exactly what this is in the medical field. It's always constantly changing, especially as the world evolves when it comes to our health, our bodies, our DNA, things of that nature, right? So the whole ability to use a medical degree to practice medicine means that no, you don't know that something is for certain, but you have the skill to figure out the outcome in the most probable manner. My brain often thinks about what life was really like before hospitals came into play with helping people and studying medicine. Because before there were hospitals, there were our ancestors on the land who used their history that they had with their civilizations when it came to medicine, and using those tools in order to carry on the tradition of using certain things for certain properties of healing based on what the person needed, right? That's the earliest type of hospital care that we can look at. The reason why I say that is because I look at the same thing when it comes to pregnancy, especially pregnancy. To me, when it comes to pregnancy, you hear a lot of times people talk about today natural birth. Yes, having a birth with absolutely no medicine is natural. 100% agree with that terminology. But in my mind, when I think of natural birth, I think of no technology. I think about how my ancestors before me would have thousands upon thousands of children, and there was no technology around. I put myself in their shoes. What did they do when it came to knowing the gender, when it came to knowing if they were okay? They had natural vitamins, they had natural minerals. They were not taking a pill that consisted of all of these properties. I oftentimes put myself in the mindset of, what was that like? What was that like for the partner? Dealing with a natural pregnancy, a natural birth, not knowing really anything. You're sticking it out for the ride at that point. You know what I mean? And to me, like, that's a very crazy thing to think about, because, when it comes to pregnancy, there's already a lot of pressure. And I feel like for women especially, there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with pregnancy, So then you have all this technology that's able to tell you how far along you are, how the gender of the baby is, showing you even down to the point of an x-ray of what the baby looks like.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I feel like that builds a lot of anxiety into the pregnancy itself, and a lot of stress onto the couples. Now granted, there's stress with going along with doing it natural if you choose to do so, to the point where you don't want to have technology involved and you don't want to go that route of traditional way of pregnancy and medicine. There can be some anxiety in that, because you have everyone in your ear telling you, oh, you need to get checkups, you need to do this, you need to do that. So there can be anxiety with not knowing, but I feel like with knowing, there's 10 times more anxiety built into it. What do you think?
I think that it's a deep-rooted fear that looks like an anxiety, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's just really a way of thinking. Like I said, everyone has their own preference, and that's a great thing to have. I think hive-mindedness is a little bit weird. But I do think that, fact over feeling more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible and it is natural, as you say, natural as can be. There is no no additional baggage, let's just say. It's your entire thing for yourself, your experience, so to speak. But everything that you want for it. If you don't, you know, care for yourself in that way and you just leave everything up to an external entity that can only do so much for how the extent of your sickness, or what was it, sick and injured,
Mm-hmm.
injury,
Mm-hmm.
to your extent. And it's crazy to say that some places go to limits and some don't go far enough.
Mm.
So it really hits.
You mean like hospitals?
Yeah.
You say like some go the extra mile and some don't at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that through history when it comes to our people and and people of color dealing with that specifically. You know, I feel like I feel like personally through hospitalization, and a lot of people of color feel this way, that you know black women in particular are looked at as able to handle, and you'll hear like doctors even admit this, that and during history black women were looked at as able to handle more pain than any other race. You look at this simple story, well, it's not simple, let me rephrase. You look at the story, the deep story of Henrietta Lacks. What happened with her was not, it wasn't just because it was in a time of civil rights coming out of Jim Crow. It was the fact that they felt as though she was able to deal with that type of illness that she had. You know, if you really look into the Henrietta Lacks story, they would turn her away oftentimes when she was seeking for help. I think that predates back to our our lineage when it comes to hospitals in general. You know, personally from experience, I remember going to the hospital when I was younger, and you know, if I had a problem with like my foot, like if it was almost a fracture, or if I was dealing with like a lung problem because I suffered from asthma when I was little, it was very much downplayed, almost to the point where it was like, oh, like there's nothing wrong with you. Where I felt like if it was not me in that moment and it was someone else, maybe they would have been treated differently. And that shows throughout history. So that's, I guess you can say that's my bias when it comes to I wouldn't say the medical field, but like you said, how some hospitals go all out and some hospitals kind of don't. Or you can just say medical field in general when it comes to like pediatricians, even nursing homes. Some go all out. You know, some really care. Some do their job. Some don't. And you find that anywhere. Whether it's hospice, whether it's healthcare, whether it's Wendy's. You look at Wendy's, like some Wendy facilities, they go all out. Fries are always fresh. Then you go to a different Wendy's and it's like half-assed.
No, you ain't lying. That's really a great way to look at it, honestly. But I really believe it is, the way that it should be.